if I was to accidentally with my wrench touch anything metal on the car, so if you just take the terminal and throw it on the new battery and tighten it up, there's potential that the clamp will bottom out and become all the way tight without it actually fully squeezing that post. Welcome back to Budget Mechanic. Today we're talking about the top mistakes people make when changing their own car battery. Now a lot of people think that car batteries are a lot more dangerous than they actually are. Now these batteries do have acidic chemicals inside and they can create a lot of heat and sparks, but they're not going to electrocute you in the way that, say, a wall outlet would if you stick your fingers in them or you touch the wires with your bare hands. Car batteries are direct current, 12 volts, which is pretty low voltage, so the current can't pass through your body and stop your heart like that. So just to demonstrate, if I touch both sides of the battery with a metal wrench, it'll give me some sparks. But if I touch it with my hand, both my hands, I'm all good, right? It can't electrocute me. It can't pass through my body like that. Now, do I recommend you go around touching batteries with wrenches? No. Now that being said, we put out a video recently on car batteries and safety, and we got a lot of crazy comments from people saying that you actually can be electrocuted by battery. If you're going out and changing your own battery in your car, as long as you're not butt naked, covered in salt water, and changing 4 of them at a time that are wired together for high voltage, you're gonna be just fine. All right, now we're gonna get into the top 5 mistakes people make when installing new batteries in their car. Make sure you stick around to the end because I've got a battery install bonus tip for you. The first mistake people make when replacing their car battery is they replace it when it doesn't need to be replaced. What I see a lot of people do is when their car won't start in the morning or they get the battery light on their dashboard, they immediately run out and buy a new battery. What they don't realize is just because a battery dies doesn't mean it's bad. So there's a lot of other things that can cause a battery to die or make it look like the battery is dead. So that could be alternators, it could be bad starters, it could be battery connections or wiring. For example, if a car's alternator is failing, it will eventually cause the battery to be dead and the car won't start. But if you go out and put a brand new battery in that car, the alternator is going to kill that one as well and you'll be back where you started. Alternators are one of the most common reasons for dead batteries, and we made a great video on diagnosing them if you want to check it out above. So if you suspect that your battery is bad, you want to first check that battery with a battery tester, or if you don't own one, go to an auto parts store that offers free battery checks and make sure that's the real cause before you buy a new battery. Now, as a side note, if you do test your battery and it tests bad, one more thing you can check is if the water levels in the battery are too low. Because if the water levels, which are actually the electrolyte levels, get too low, the battery will no longer receive charge and it'll act like a dead battery. But sometimes you can revive an old battery just by adding a little distilled water to it. The next mistake people make is they remove the positive terminal first when they're removing a battery. And the reason this is an issue is because the negative terminal is actually connected directly to the body of the car. You can see this wire comes straight off the battery, straight to the car, which essentially means the whole car, everything that's metal, is the negative terminal of the battery. If I were to go and take off the positive terminal of this battery, if I was to accidentally with my wrench touch anything metal on the car, it would create that short circuit just like I did before, and you'd get a whole bunch of sparks, maybe fry something in your electrical. So the proper way to do it is to remove the negative terminal first, because while I'm removing the negative terminal to make it safe, if I happen to touch a metal body part of the car, no big deal because the car is the negative terminal. So you want to take the negative terminal off, get it out of the way, then you do the positive terminal, because then if you touch the body of the car, it's no longer connected to the battery, no sparks, no problem. Now if you don't do this very often, it is hard to remember which comes first. But as my therapist always says, you gotta get rid of that negativity. Hold on to the positive. Same with the battery. And of course, the reverse is true. When you're installing the new battery, the positive terminal goes on first, negative last. Next mistake people make is spilling the fluid that's inside the battery when they're removing the old one. So inside these batteries is a mixture of water and other chemicals, including sulfuric acid, which, if you remember chemistry class, is really bad for your skin and your eyes, your body in general. Also bad for cars. It strips paint, really hard on metal parts, so you don't want to get that stuff anywhere. Now these caps on top of the batteries are meant to seal that in, but when they get old, sometimes the seals fail, and if you were to tip this battery over, it can come out, get on you, get on the car, and it's a bad deal. Also, when batteries get old, they often start leaking that acid out of them naturally. So you can get an old battery like this one, it's already got liquid starting to leak out. So it's a good idea to have gloves on anyway. So So whenever you're handling a car battery, especially an old one, that's a lead acid battery, which most of them are, don't tip it, don't lay it on its side. You just want to be really careful because there's caustic chemicals inside. You don't want it coming out, wrecking your body or your car. Next mistake people make when they're installing a new battery is they put it in backwards, or they reverse the cable direction. So that would be like putting your positive terminal on the negative post of the battery and vice versa. So that can be really bad because essentially current that's supposed to be going one way through your car system is now potentially going the other way, and you could fry things like the car's computer, any electrical element. You could maybe even start a fire. Now, the way that most batteries are set up, it is pretty hard to get them physically reversed. A lot of positive cables on cars are really short, like it's hard to get them over to the other side. But there are the exceptions that it would be possible to put the positive on the negative and negative on the positive. So you just want to be really careful when you're installing a new battery. Make sure you're putting the positive cable on the positive terminal. They're usually clearly marked on the battery. And then if the cables aren't marked themselves, one quick way is usually the negative cable is going to go straight to the body of the car. Another mistake people make is not cleaning or tightening these terminals onto the posts properly when they're installing a new battery. It doesn't take much corrosion on the inside of these terminals to limit or actually stop the flow of current from the battery to the various parts of your engine. I've actually rescued a lot of people that had dead batteries just by removing these terminals, cleaning them off, and reinstalling them. So you want to get some sandpaper or a wire brush, and you want to get in here and clean these. Usually they're made of copper, so once you start seeing that copper color, you know it's nice and clean. Focusing mainly on the inside where it actually touches the pole of the battery. When you're tightening the terminal onto the battery, you want to make sure it's nice and snug, but you don't want to over tighten it because most of these components are made of like copper and soft metals, and you can actually break the terminals pretty easily. But you do want them tight enough. You should be able to grab the terminal with your hand, and you shouldn't be able to spin it. If you can, too loose. This brings me to that bonus tip, which I mentioned at the beginning. What a lot of people don't realize is the posts on a battery are actually tapered. So they taper up, they're thinner at the top. So if you just take the terminal and throw it on the new battery and tighten it up, there's potential that the clamp will bottom out and become all the way tight without it actually fully squeezing that post. Your battery terminals are designed to go all the way to the base of the post and then be tightened. So the danger is if you don't check carefully, you can tighten up your terminal somewhere up high in the taper. It'll come tight, but it won't actually be tight on the post. So here's what I do. When I'm putting on a terminal onto a new battery, I first loosen the terminal a whole bunch, so there's a big gap on that nut. Then I do a tiny little hammer job, forcing it down to the base of the post. Then when I know it's fully seated, I can go back, tighten that nut up, nice and snug. And now I can see the terminal has come tight on the post, and there's even still air gap on that clamp. So I know that it's fully tight. Thanks for watching. If you want to save more money on car repairs, check out some of our other always helpful, often entertaining videos here.